So the first one is myelination, and anyone who does a lot of sport who repeats a certain, weight training will understand that that's what's happening in their muscles. You know, when I said, you come here pretty much every day and you sit with someone and you interview them and you're really great at asking questions. That's like something you're super good at, that because you repeat it, it becomes like a superpower. And that means that what's happening there is myelination. So myelin is a fatty substance that coats some neural pathways, and those pathways become fast pathways. Now, there's a reason from evolution why we have some fast pathways and some slow pathways. And the reason is that if you put your hand in the fire, your reflex to snatch your hand out is a fast pathway, but your pain reflex is a slow pathway. Because if you were incapacitated by pain the minute you put your hand in the fire, you wouldn't be able to get away from it. One of the mechanisms of neuroplasticity is becoming even better at something that you're really good at, and that happens through myelination. The most common one, which is something that you're quite good at, but if you had loads of time, you could become really good at it, but you maybe don't have loads of time, happens through synaptic connection. So that's the one that can feel like quite hard work, but if you put in the effort, then you can change your brain. So that means that neurons that already exist in the brain connect up with each other and start to form new pathways. And the third mechanism, which doesn't happen a lot in the adult brain, but it does happen around the hippocampus because we do lay down new memories in life, happens a lot in children's brains, is called neurogenesis. And that is little embryonic nerve cells that float around in the brain actually becoming fully formed nerve cells, neurons, and connecting up through synaptic connection and maybe getting myelinated. And there's a growth factor that's involved in that, the embryonic cell becoming an adult cell, which is called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And trophic means growth, so neurotrophic is growth of neurons. And the things that contribute mostly to that are aerobic exercise and eating dark-skinned foods. Yeah.
Dark-skinned foods?
Yeah. So let me just cover the exercise one first, because this is one of my fun facts, which is that if you are regularly doing aerobic exercise, the turnover of those cells in your brain is about 13-14%.
So like the amount and the speed in which they like die off?
No, the speed in which they go from embryonic to full-grown cell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because we want neurogenesis to happen.
Okay.
If you haven't been doing exercise for a while and then you start, the rate of cell turnover is like 30%. So it increases after a period of inactivity with new aerobic exercise. So that's my excuse for like being a couch potato half the time and then starting up again.
Oh yeah. Who are you kidding? Okay, so it will accelerate the speed in which you're making those connections.
Yeah, making the embryonic cells grow into new cells and then connect up with existing ones.
So I want to make sure I'm super clear on this. So if I'm trying to speak a different language, by doing exercise, that has an impact on...
Oh, it'll help you learn and retain memories, yeah.
So in simple language, if I'm doing aerobic exercise, my ability to accelerate my neuroplasticity will increase.
Yeah.
Oh. What if it's like not aerobic exercise? What if I'm just like lifting big weights?
There are benefits to your brain of other types of exercise, but weight training doesn't relate to neurogenesis as much.
Okay.
This isn't so much about language, but it's another example of mind over matter. So this was an experiment done on 2 groups of weightlifters. Thought you might like this one.
That's a big compliment. Thank you so much. You think I'm a weightlifter? You think I identify as a weightlifter? You looked at me and thought weightlifter.
Totally.
Thank you so much.
This was finger and elbow weights, though, so maybe not so glamorous in this experiment.
Okay.
So one group lifted finger or elbow weights. I think this was a 2-week study, and they showed, I think it was about a 40% increase in muscle mass of the targeted muscle group for those weights. Their counterparts only imagined lifting weights for 2 weeks. They lifted no weights for 2 weeks. They just sat there and they visualized themselves lifting weights. And they had a 13% increase in muscle mass.
Interesting. So we can tell our brain to grow muscle.
Have you been secretly doing that,
No,
Steve?
but I could be doing that instead. I've been going to the gym. It'd be much easier if I could just watch the football and tell myself that I'm lifting weights.
Well, I don't think you can watch the football. I think the whole like visualization and, intention and attention stuff was an important part of it.
I mean, that speaks to the power of our thoughts again, doesn't it, really? If our thoughts can tell our brain to grow muscles. Is that?
It's in the book.
But is that widely accepted as the truth? I'm surprised there's not like personal trainers that just sit you down in an empty room and just go, right.
Well, think about the number of athletes that use visualization as part of their training. Of course, they do the exercise and the practice and everything, but that's hugely used in sports.
Interesting. It's obviously not a case that I would just then go home and start imagining working out, but it does again remind me of the importance of just thinking about positive things that are in line with my goals.
Yeah. I mean, what's the harm in imagining yourself more muscular or more youthful alongside eating the dark foods and getting enough sleep? It's like it's part of the package. Do you want to know what you should eat so that you can...
Please, what is this dark-skinned foods?
So basically, at the basic level, we want people to have a healthy, balanced diet, mostly plant-based. But where you can choose a darker version of a food, the pigment in the skin of that food has higher levels of antioxidants called anthocyanins, and they also contribute to neurogenesis. So it's basically like eating black beans instead of white beans, or eating blueberries instead of strawberries, dark chocolate instead of milk chocolate, purple sprouting broccoli instead of green broccoli. And good quality coffee counts as well. Yeah, so I try to vary what I eat, but also always choose the darker option if I can.
Okay, so is there anything else that one needs to know about the process of neuroplasticity? So from what I've ascertained so far, it's about understanding the patterns we have in our brain, understanding the consequences of them. Repetition is key to establishing new pathways. Is there anything else that I need to be really aware of? Because I do want to grow my brain and change my brain.
Yeah. So the accountability piece, which we've discussed,
yeah.
But also creating the conditions in your body for your brain to be able to do all of that stuff. And so, this is a bit of repetition, but sleeping roughly 8 hours a night, having regular sleep and wake times seems to have an additional benefit. We don't know why. So within an hour, so go to sleep between 10 and 11, wake up whenever. Not being sedentary, so being physically active doesn't necessarily mean you have to pound it at the gym. To be honest, in terms of neuroplasticity, you don't want to do too much high intensity exercise because it spikes your cortisol levels. So it's better to do kind of quite gentle exercise. Eating 30 different plant products a week and varying the color as much as possible. Managing your stress, whether it's through meditation or just like removing the causes of stress. If you're doing, and being hydrated, if you are doing all of those things and you want to play at level 2 of the game, you could start doing time-restricted eating. So I only eat between 12 noon and 8 p.m., but you could do 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So that kind of fasting is very beneficial for your brain as well, but only if you've got the foundations right. It's not going to help you if you don't.
What does it do for the brain, fasting, intermittent fasting?
Well, it helps to regulate your blood sugar levels. So, spiking blood sugar levels aren't good for your body or your brain. And fasting and calorie restriction, they do have like brain health and longevity benefits, but that, only if your foundations are right. Somebody who's stressed or eats badly or doesn't sleep enough will not benefit from time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting, because it is a form of stress on your body, but it's a form of stress that your body can take and use to build resilience if the baseline level of stuff is good.
And for neuroplasticity to happen, we need to be taking on big cognitive challenges, challenges that kind of break existing pathways.
Yeah.
So I want to learn to DJ. I've been learning for about 12 months now. Mm-hmm. That feels like a big cognitive challenge for me.
Yeah, that's great.
That's the type of thing that would establish a new pathway in my brain.
Absolutely.
Someone's just looking to build their self-esteem and their confidence. Mm-hmm. What does the brain tell us about the process of doing that? Does it go back again to what we said about awareness, about understanding the feelings and the consequences, and about setting goals and repetition? and accountability.
It will get to that, but there's actually a little bit of a jump start to that, which is really helpful, particularly in terms of confidence and self-esteem, which is that usually there's a particular recurring negative thought that's associated with feelings of lack of confidence. So if you can identify what that is and create a positive affirmation that's like the opposite of it or something that counteracts it, then that can be a great way to get started. My phrase would have been, it has to be perfect and it's not going to be perfect. I wouldn't have been able to say this last year, but now I would probably be able to say, it is going to be better than perfect. It is going to be amazing. Like, I know it. But to get myself there, I could have said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's going to be great. Or I could have said, maybe it will be perfect. Sometimes a question I ask myself is, what's the best possible outcome that could happen here? So it's changing your language in your mind about the things that you think. So that's basically metacognition, which is that you can understand your own thinking, and then reversing that narrative quite strongly, even if it doesn't feel like it's totally true, and just repeating that so much that you start to wear down that other pathway.
Does language really matter? The language we say to ourselves and say to others?
Yeah, it really matters. Yeah, how we speak about ourselves.
How do we know that matters?
I mean, it's neuroplasticity. If you're repeating something in your mind or out loud, then if that's being repeated more than another statement, it's the one that your brain's going to believe.
So we can trick our brains effectively by saying something else to ourselves repeatedly. Because there's this whole movement in, the personal development community which says you just kind of look in the mirror and you say to yourself, like, I'm beautiful, I'm attractive, everyone's going to love me, I'm going to be rich. And I've found it hard to get on board with that train.
Yeah. That one...
Because I know I'm bullshitting myself. In my subconscious or whatever, I just know if I said those things, I'm not saying about myself, but saying those very, very far away things, I just think my brain is smart enough to know that I'm bullshitting myself.
Yeah, I think there's an element of reality to it. So there's a few things there, which is those particular things that you said are very shallow. They are not really the things that people should need to be saying to themselves. What I find, and I picked this up from a podcast with Lewis, is he said that sometimes he would just say to himself, I'm safe, I'm okay. And actually just sometimes saying to myself, I'm safe, that's what I need to hear, not I'm beautiful and I'm amazing. That does feel like, A, it's the kind of thing that everybody probably wants to say. B,
it's not addressing the underlying issue, is it?
It's not addressing, and I'm going to be rich. I mean, that's the worst one, because you actually have to do stuff to make that happen. You can't just say that. So I think finding the stuff that you need to say to yourself that is not to do with social expectation or parental expectation or, social group, what everybody else is doing, like what you really want to know for yourself, that's going to set you up to be able to go out into the real world and do the stuff that you need to do to get the other things that you want.
There you said, you can't just say it, you have to go out and do it. Now, when people hear this term manifestation, it's highly associated with just kind of saying stuff or thinking stuff. And it's less associated with actually going out and doing it. So a lot of people just turn off when someone talks about manifestation because it sounds kind of woo-woo, put it on the vision board and it will happen. And in fact, I think I've said this a few times, but I had, I wouldn't say it was an argument, but a disagreement, which resulted in the person I was speaking to literally getting out of a taxi in the middle of New York City and walking off. I was on a date many years ago, and the girl was saying to me that she goes, you can just manifest anything into your life. So you can just think about it and then it will happen. So I said to her, I was like, you think you could just think about becoming a millionaire and then it will happen? And she goes, yeah. And I go, and you wouldn't even have to do all the stuff. And she was like, no, you could just think about it and the universe will attract it into your life. Do you believe in manifestation? And if so, what form of manifestation? And how is that supported with neuroscience?
So I believe in manifestation based on your brain. So your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions. So where I've called my book The Source, I have said your brain is the source of you being able to attract everything that you want into your life. So I sat down one summer and I researched the laws of attraction and just looked at whether I could explain them through cognitive science, which is psychology and neuroscience, and I could. So I was kind of like, oh, I'm onto something here. And the first stage for me was understanding that it is absolutely to do with the way that you think, but then it's not magically like attracting something in the atmosphere. It's to do with the changes that you make based on your thought process. I do believe in vision boards, but I call them action boards because I see them as a representation of what I want, but I still have to go out there and make those things happen. Mm. I think it's also much more empowering to believe that it's your brain that's making that stuff happen and not some external force that you're not really sure what it is.
So how would I manifest something into my life? Say I want to manifest a great relationship. Mm-hmm. I'm in a great relationship, but say I was single and I wanted to manifest the perfect partner. Mm-hmm. How would I manifest the perfect partner into my life? Using the brain as the source.
Yeah, so with that one, I think the preferred method is to create a list of the attributes that you want in that person. But you then have to make sure that you are everything that is on that list.
Ooh. So if I want a blonde, I've got to dye my hair. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Okay, I get what you mean. So you're talking about fundamental qualities and values.
Yeah.
And then making sure that you represent those qualities and values. I've never heard anyone say that, but that is so important because I know so many people who would write a list that they couldn't meet themselves in terms of fundamental values. They'd probably want their partner to be disciplined, to care about their health, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And if they ask themselves, are they those things, they'd probably fail at that. Mm. To be fair, my partner is so much better than me in so many ways, nearly every way. I'd probably fail at that list too. Why is that important?
I think that you hear a lot of people saying, this is what I really want in someone. But you never really hear people saying, I've really worked on myself and this is what I believe I have to offer. And so psychologically, you meet people at the level of psychological evolution that you're at. But equally, on the sort of flip side of the coin, you meet people at the level of psychological wound that you have. So to be in a balanced relationship with someone that's really great, you've got to be bringing something to the party. I mean, no one's going to go out with you if they're really amazing and you're a drag.
But drags want amazing people. And this is the problem, right? It's true, right?
I guess so.
Were you scared to say it? Like, when I was at optimal drag in my life, when I was the most drag in my life, I attracted drag people, but I wanted amazing people and I could never get them.
Yeah, but I feel like with you, that was part of your journey of knowing that you could become an amazing person.
I believed I could.
Yeah, exactly. So you got an amazing person once you did the work that took you out of Dragsville.
Amen. Okay, so that's super interesting. So make sure you are the things on that list because we'll rise to the level of our values and we'll fall to the level of our wounds.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, but also that, you know, what you have to offer in a relationship is just as important as what you want out of it. And I don't know, as a society, we just don't really seem to think about it like that.
There's actually a note in my diary where I wrote, people who focus on what they want don't typically get what they want. And people who focus on what they have to offer typically get what they want.
That's amazing. That's like basically the same thing.
Yeah, I literally just parroted it off you, plagiarized it. No, but it is in my diary, and I posted on my Instagram story a while ago that it was just an observation to me in business when you hire people, the people that are focused on like, can I get a pay rise? Can I get a pay rise? Don't typically get the pay rise, but the people that focus on what they have to offer, they're the ones that you give you promote and you give the pay rise to because they're focusing on the most important thing, which is, I think over prolonged periods of time, not always in the short term, and not always in every case, but life will eventually give you roughly what you deserve. Over a long term, generally for most people, not always.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be someone that says,
Yeah.
So you can't what about me because I've presented the caveat. But generally, that's what I've observed. And I've seen people cheat the system. I've seen people get a little bit further ahead than their talent or their value. Mm-hmm. But life has a wonderful way of bringing us back to the level of our values. And you said it in relationships. Mm-hmm. Life will drop you to the depth of your wounds or to the height of your values. So really, if you want to find a sustainable way to get what you want in life, it's to do that work on what you can offer other people.
Yeah. And as you were speaking, it made me think that actually, let's say if I was constantly like, oh, you know, I want this pay rise, I want that man, that's got to be a cortisol inducing state in your body. But if instead of that, I'm like, what can I do for Stephen? I have so much love to give. That's going to be oxytocin. And who's someone going to be more attracted to?
Interesting. Oh, that's so true. One of the things I want to talk to you about that has been risen in culture recently is neurodivergence.
Mm-hmm.
Big topic.
Mm.
Autism, ADHD, so much there. I had a mother send me a voice note the other day. Her child has just been diagnosed with autism. She's really struggling with it and trying to understand what it means and where it came from and was it hereditary. And there's so many guests on my podcast have talked about the rise in diagnosis of ADHD and is it something that we are causing by the way that we choose to live our lives? When you, from an understanding of neuroscience, what is neurodiversity and what are causing it and what is curing it?
Yeah, so this would come more from my experience as a psychiatrist when I did do some work with children as well. So neurodiversity is basically anything that doesn't fall into the category of a typical brain. So, you know, the way that most of the population think and how their brain works. So that would include things like dyslexia and dyscalculia and ADD, ADHD and autism / Asperger's spectrum and other things. I think that a lot of it is to do with better diagnosis. So I'm not saying it isn't the case that these things have risen, but I think we're also much better at diagnosing them. So, for example, when I worked with mostly little boys with ADHD, when I saw them for the first time and I took the full family history, there was quite often an absent father who'd actually been in like several different relationships and like couldn't hold down a job. And you kind of thought, yeah, he probably had it, but was undiagnosed. So there is an element of that. I do think that it is an adaptation to the world, which is changing at such a rapid pace, which is, you know, always switched on, so much technology. And some people would say that autism is even like a form of evolution in a way to like help us keep up with the changing pace of the world.